Compost, the lifeblood of the garden, the food that feeds the soil so the soil can feed the plants. It's the single most important ingredient any gardener can add to their garden beds. Hi everyone, my name is Riley and welcome to my garden. Today we're talking about 10 things I wish I'd known before I started composting. Thing number 1, all you need is love and compost. In all seriousness, there was a time in my gardening life where I could not walk through a garden center without purchasing some nutrient additive or garden additive that was going to be a game changer for the vegetables that I grew in my garden. Something I'd read on the internet or that I saw on YouTube, and I couldn't walk through that garden store without buying something. What I've learned, the only thing that we need for our garden beds in most cases is compost. Compost added to our garden beds once or twice a year contains all of the nutrients, everything our garden beds need to grow great vegetables. And in many cases, all of the materials we need to make that compost are available to us right in our homes and in our backyards. Thing number 2, compost happens. Don't stress out about how hot your compost is getting. I used to obsess over this. I would check it every day. If the temperature fell below 120 degrees, I would try to go find more material to add to it. I would flip it. I would try to do all these things to try to keep that temperature up above 130 degrees because I thought that was important to make compost. And compost happens. It's just the decomposition of organic material over time. The hotter your compost gets, the more work you put into it, the shorter period of time it's going to take to make that compost. But for me, I don't want to do all that work. And what I find is if I just fill this side of the compost bin up, during that filling process, the temperature ranges from 100 degrees to 120 degrees. And I know my compost is active. When this side is filled up, I transfer it from this side over to this side. And when I do that initial flip, after 3 months of filling this up, yes, that temperature raises up to 130 to 140 degrees and stays there for 1 or 2 days. And then that temperature goes back down to 100 degrees and 120 degrees and stays there for the next 3 to 4 months until this compost bin is finished. And it makes great compost. So thing number 2, don't stress about the heat. Thing number 3, turning a compost pile sucks. It's a pain in the arse. I used to have a single compost bin, and what I would have to do, turn that compost bin, is I'd have to take all the material out of the compost bin, I'd have to lay it out on a tarp, put it into containers, and then put it back in that compost bin in reverse order of how I took it out. If you have the space, it's really worth it, even if you only turn that compost bin one time, to have 2 bins side by side like I have here. It makes it a really easy job. When you do have to turn the compost bin, you just shovel it or fork it from this side into this side. It takes less than 15 minutes and that work is done. The only time you have to do it for your compost. Thing number 4, wet compost is really, really bad. If you get heavy rains and you've ever had your compost bin get completely soaked in water, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The temperature drops well below 80 degrees. It is just thoroughly soaked with water. Decomposition is not happening. What's happening is the material is just rotting. You can smell it. It is not pleasant, and it really can be a problem. What I have learned, adding a lid to your compost bin or even something as simple as putting a tarp over it is going to save you a ton of work if you ever get those heavy torrential rains that just soak your compost. Because the way you have to fix that is you have to dig out all that compost, you have to break that smelly compost apart, you've got to spread it all out on tarps, let it dry out, and then put it back into your compost bin, and it can be a pain. We're up to thing 5, but before we get to that, got some good news for you. There's actually 11 things that I'm going to talk about. I've got one bonus item at the end I really think you should stick around for, because I think it's the main reason why a lot of people that can compost don't, and I want to ease your mind about that one. Hey, if you've liked the video so far, please hit that like button and share this video. It really helps the channel out. And if you're not a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button and ring that bell so you'll be notified the next time we put out a video. Thing number 5. All you really need to make compost is grass clippings and shredded paper. It's as simple as that, and many of us already have access to that. My urban home backyard has about 20 feet by 60 feet mowable space. Every week when I mow the lawn, I add the grass clippings to my compost bin. I add equal amounts or more of shredded paper. I wet that all down, and I repeat that week after week. And many weeks out of the year, that's the only thing I have available to put in my compost bin. So if this is the only thing that you have access to, don't let that stop you from composting. You're gonna make great compost with just grass clippings and shredded paper. Thing number 6. A good shredder makes your life and composting much easier. Now, a good shredder can shred both junk mail and cardboard. And the reason the shredder makes composting easier is because the smaller the inputs you have for your compost, the easier it is for those inputs to interact with each other and break down. You're going to be left with less big chunks of uncomposted material when that compost is done. The other benefits of having a shredder are you're going to start to pay attention to what you buy, the packaging it comes in, and you're going to end up sending a lot less material to the local landfill. That material you can put through that shredder, you're going to put through that shredder, and you're going to add it to your compost bin, and it's going to help you make great compost. Thing number 7. Composting takes time, and that's cool because we really only need to put compost on our gardens once or twice a year. We don't need to have compost every 30 days, and I see a lot of videos or internet articles on how to make compost in 30 days, how to make compost quick and easy, and you can do it. You can put a lot of time and energy into it. You can constantly turn that compost. You can make sure you're adding just the right materials with just the right proportions. And yes, you can make compost in 30 days, but you don't need to. My garden is in zone 9B. It's a year-round garden. I put compost on my garden twice per year. That means that I have a full 6 months to make enough compost for my garden. That is plenty of time. So don't be in a rush. Time is on our side. Compost takes time, and that's cool because we don't need compost year-round. Thing number 8. You're only going to get about half as much compost as that full bin. Compost, as it's composting, that's going to shrink, it's going to compress. You can see here, this compost bin was filled up to the top about 4 months ago. I've already taken about half of this compost out, but it had shrunk down all the way to about here. And that's fine. Just know that in advance. This much compost, or about 13 cubic feet of compost, is more than enough to fill all of my garden beds and start all of my seeds for the fall garden. Thing number 9. Sifted compost works great for starting seeds. It's got better water retention than seed starting mix or potting mix, and has all the nutrients your seed starts need. Works perfectly. While we're here, thing number 10. Chickens make the perfect complement to any compost bin. I don't put any food scraps in my compost bin. All the food scraps from the family go to the chickens, basically anything without a bone. They process those food scraps, and then once every month or so, I'll empty all the bedding out of this chicken coop, add it into my compost bin. A great source of nitrogen for my compost, and it's worked perfectly for me. Let's wrap this video up with our final thing, and the bonus thing is rodents. A lot of people don't want to compost because they're worried that rodents will find their compost bin, and specifically rats, and they're going to have rats in their garden. And this is a valid concern. And I'll tell you, 2-3 years ago, I did find evidence of rats burrowing under my fence line and coming into my garden. Set a few traps and I did find those rats. And I'll tell you exactly what I did in my urban backyard. Over the course of about 4 weeks, I dug up and buried 8 inches of 1/2 inch hardware cloth at the base all around the fence of my fence line. I then put out a couple of traps. I caught the remaining rats that were hiding in and around my garden, and since then I have had no sign of any rats in the garden. If you don't have a fence all around your garden and your property, you may be able to keep your compost bin as far away from your garden as possible, and that should keep the rats out of your garden. But at the end of the day, they really aren't going to harm anything. What we want to avoid them from doing is somehow finding their way under your home and then causing damage with your home. But as far as damaging your garden, they're really not going to hurt it. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, hit that thumbs up and please share it. If you're a subscriber, thank you, thank you, thank you. And if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe to the channel and ring that bell so you'll be notified next week when we put out our next video. My name is Riley, and this is my garden. Thank you for watching.